Hello everyone and welcome back to Scary Stories channel. There are 3 disturbing horror stories. Listen carefully and enjoy with rain. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. I was spending the weekend Washington at a cabin in the Cascades. It was pretty far out of the major cities and was down a long dirt road with dense forest all around. Winter was just starting, so there was a little bit of snow, but nothing too much. The first 3 days were great. It was peaceful, quiet, and relaxing, but midway through the 4th day, there was a knock at the door. I had no idea who it was or who it could have been. I walked over and opened the door, as there wasn't any other way for me to see the porch from inside the cabin. There was a man. He had a thick winter jacket on and a black wool hat. His face was pale with red cheeks, and snow was sticking to his clothes. He's clearly been outside for a while. "How can I help you?" The man gave a friendly smile and said he was just a bit lost and wanted to know the way back into town. I was confused. Was he trying to walk the 1-hour drive to town in the cold and snow? And how did he even get out here in the first place? Take a left here and follow it, her main road, at a straight shot from there. I figured it wasn't any of my business, so I just told him what he asked for. He smiled and nodded. There was a strange pause for a few seconds as he just stood there, and neither of us spoke. I got uncomfortable and said by closing the door. I heard his boots walk off the porch. Soon after, it was an interesting interaction, for sure. But I went back to what I was doing and forgot about it not too long after. Several hours passed. The light snowfall from earlier had started to pick up, which made me a little nervous because I wasn't sure how my car would handle the dirt roads with thick snow. To keep an eye on the weather, and went to the back door and pulled the curtains back so I could have a view from the living room. When I did, I was kind of startled. There were shoe prints in the snow walking around the back of the cabin. Again, I was so far out that anyone just walking around here was very strange. It was hard to tell how fresh the prints were, though. I wasn't sure how long the snowfall had picked up for, so it could have been as long as several hours ago, or as soon as just a few minutes ago. My mind immediately thought back to the man who came by the door earlier. Had he gone around the cabin before going up to the door, maybe? He thought the cabin might be empty and was snooping around to find out. That would be really creepy, though. I felt really uneasy after seeing the shoe prints in the snow. It didn't help that the sun had already set too. It was too dark, cold, and windy outside to even try to look around. I closed the curtains and went around to make sure all the doors were locked, then turned off all the lights and went into the bedroom. There wasn't a TV in there or anything, so I just pulled up a video to watch on my laptop as I laid in bed. I was trying to relax and shake the uneasy feeling I had. It took a while, by probably an hour, before I was feeling better. The steady sound of the snow outside in the dark cabin room started to make me sleepy. I shut the laptop screen and started getting ready for bed when a knock came from the front door. I physically jumped. I stood still for a moment while I just felt my mind go blank from the sudden fear that came over me. They knocked a gun. "Hey, it's me again. I'm still Law. It's cold out here. Can you please help me?" It was the man who stopped by earlier. Why the hell was he still around here? I opened the bedroom door so I could listen better and looked out into the main area of the cabin. There was really dark, and the man continuously knocking was extremely unsettling. But then after, don't know, maybe 30 seconds, the knocking starved. The wind outside felt like it picked up. It was the only thing I could hear. I really wanted to know if he left, though, or where he went. I quietly crept out into the main room, which I knew had all the curtains and blinds closed, so he shouldn't be able to see me. Without opening the door, my only option was to look out one of the windows. It didn't have a clear view of the porch, but I could see the front of the cabin leading up to the road. I pushed the curtain aside and looked. I could see a set of footprints going up to the porch, but none leaving. He must still be at the door. I walked back and got. My phone service was good enough to call 911. They estimated it would be 45 minutes before they would make it. I locked myself in the bedroom and waited. 10 minutes went by with not a single sound, which was really eerie, knowing he had to be just silently standing outside the door. All I heard was the heavy wind smacking against the windows. Then there was a sudden thud against the cabin. I had no idea what it was, but it sounded like it came from the front of the cabin, and it was pretty loud, but then it was silent again. I was shaking and terrified. Time seemed to move extremely slow. Eventually, red and blue lights began flashing outside, the windows feeling relieved. I got up and started walking to the front door until I heard the officer yelling to get down. I listened as he kept yelling, and there was clearly something going on outside. Then that thought, it sounded through the cabin and gallon, followed again by the officer yelling. Turned out the guy actually never laughed. He had climbed onto the roof of the cabin, and I guess was just sitting up there waiting. Maybe for me to forget about it and try to find a way, and in the middle of the night, I don't know. The officer made him get down and arrested him for trespassing. Other than that, the guy did well not to admit to trying anything. It seems like he'd been outside, around my cabin for the entire day, though, which is really disturbing. What he was really trying to do is unknown, or likely was something really awful. Story 2. I work at a 24/7 ice cream shop. It's a really small place. Like one room that maybe 10 customers could stand in our time. The place was actually pretty popular in our small town, though it was a common hangout spot for high schoolers because the parking lot was pretty big and had unoccupied, or abandoned shops next to it. It was like a strip mall, except only the ice cream shop was still open. Usually the crowds were gone by 10 though, and it would just be the occasional group of kids stopping by in the middle of the night. I worked part-time overnight shifts, typically from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. This night I got in, did the usual cleaning up, the mess the previous workers left for me. It only took about 30 minutes, so after that I just sat back and waited. Around 1 a.m. a group of teens came in, but other than that it was Dad. Halfway through my shift I got so bored that I decided to do some extra cleaning up around the back. I tossed a bunch of garbage out and headed outside to toss it into the dumpster. The dumpster was actually in the front of the shop, kind of, on the side of the big parking lot near the other abandoned shops. I walked over and tossed the trash on. The night was quiet, not even any cars out driving around. As I walked back through, I noticed the lights flicker in one of the abandoned shops. I thought it had to be a reflection of a car passing by or something, but after looking at the road and again seeing no cars, I got really confused. Was I just seeing things? I walked slower, keeping my eyes on the front windows of the store and just waiting for something. Then it happened again. A light shined past the windows for only a few seconds. It looked kind of like someone shining a flashlight around deep inside the back of the store. After that brief sighting, though, it didn't happen again, so I really had no way to confirm anything. The only part that kind of shook me about this was that the light was in the abandoned building that was attached to the ice cream shop, so it was just on the other side of the wall where I worked. I reassured myself that if it was someone in there, it was probably just some kids exploring the empty building, completely harmless. There really wasn't much else to do aside from wait around for the rest of my shift. It was about 2 a.m. now. I leaned against the counter and just stared out the front windows, spacing out when I heard something beside me. I looked at the wall and it sounded again against the other side of the wall. It was relatively quiet though. I only noticed that because the night was completely silent. I quickly connected the dots between the sound and the line I saw in that building. Was 99% sure someone had broken into there. I thought about possibly calling the cops just to let them know, but my train of thought was interrupted when a customer walked in. It was always strange when a single customer came in the middle of the night, like with no friends or anything, but this guy was even more odd. He was in his 40s and he looked very unkempt, long untrimmed beard, greasy hair and a tired look all over his face. As he walked up to the counter, his stench was almost unbearable. "Wow, command, what can I get for you?" He looked at me, then at the display case, then back up at me. After a few seconds of him not saying anything, he smiled, backed up, and left out the door. I whispered what for how under my breath, really creeped out by that encounter. It was insanely odd that along with whatever was going on in the empty building was making this night really unnerving. I wasn't really sure what to do though, aside from just hope. I was overthinking it and wait for my shift and to clear my head a bit and just have a break from it all. I decided to take my lunch. Usually I just sit in the back and eat, but I felt like getting some fresh air and getting out of that place. I grabbed my lunch bag and walked out to my car. I sat in there and ate while looking out the window. A few minutes past the night was still really quiet and the building was nowhere to be seen. Then I saw someone come around the corner of the shop, followed by another person. I recognized the jacket being the same strange guy that came in only a few minutes ago. The other guy I hadn't seen before, but he had something in his hand. I was far away, but I was reasonably certain that it was a flashlight. I felt a lump in my throat as I watched the men go into the ice cream shop and start looking around, not like customers looking for someone to take their order, but like angry men searching for their victim. I dialed 911. The men jumped over the counter and looked in the back room, coming back out 30 seconds later and running out of the shop. They didn't steal anything, they were definitely looking for me. They ran around the back of the building and disappeared. When cops got there, the men were gone. One of the abandoned stores had a door busted open though, so those men definitely had been in there. What they were doing is still unknown. However, it seems like the one guy came into the shop just to see if I was alone, then went back to get his body, but by chance I happened to take my lunch in my car. If not, I don't know what would have happened. Story 3. I live in a pretty old apartment. It was just cheap enough for me to live alone in it, so that was the only reason I live there. It definitely has its issues though. Anyway, this was a regular night after getting out of work. It was late, but I'd actually gotten out of work 2 hours early, so I got home and heated up dinner, then sat on the couch to watch TV for the rest of the night. I was really tired already. It wasn't planning on staying up late. The dim lighting and the soft TV only made me more sleepy. I think I was only home for an hour before calling in for the night. I turned off the TV, went to my bedroom, and fell asleep within 5 minutes. I didn't remember the weather being windy that night, and I only mentioned that because a few hours later, I woke up to a creaking sound. The building was old, so any light wind would often make its way and cause these echoing creaks and rumbles through the walls. But again, I didn't think it was windy out in the creek. I thought I heard wasn't the same as it usually was. As all these thoughts ran through my head, the creaking started again and it didn't stop. It was almost then this rhythmic pattern. One creak followed by a second of silence, then another creak again and again. sounding like it was from somewhere on the other side of my apartment. I got out of bed, my heart was pacing, but I still wasn't totally convinced that it wasn't the old building. I opened my bedroom door. There was a hallway that led down to the front door, and at the end on either side was the kitchen and living room. I looked down the hallway, as I can now hear that the creaking was coming from the left side. It took me a moment, but I started to realize the sound was moving across the floor, and by the time I noticed that getting louder, I couldn't even react before seeing a figure suddenly appear at the end of the hallway. My entire body tensed up in, froze by the man didn't look down at me. They kept walking slowly across the under the hallway. They just stared to it, never looking down the hallway. Adrenaline pumped through me, and I moved back around the corner into my room. I didn't close the door, scared of making a sound. The creaking continued through the kitchen a few times. They stopped, and this sounded like they opened and closed a few of the cabinets before walking again. My heart was racing even faster. How did he get in? And that had to be only a matter of time before he came walking down the hallway. And just as I was thinking this, I saw his shadow move toward the under the hallway, but again he walked past at the creaking, moved through the living room, and then I heard the soft squeak of them sitting on my couch. Everything about this made no sense, making it even more horrifying. I crept over to my bed and got my phone, then texted 911. I was still too scared to call and risk them hearing me. The next 3 or 4 minutes were just full of tension and anxiety, knowing this guy was just on the other side of my apartment, sitting on my couch, and could at any moment get up and walk into my room, but he never did. I got a text that the officers were in the building and coming up to my door, so I gathered up my courage and sprinted down the hallway and opened the door for them. They stormed in and tackled the guy, who'd barely even gotten off from the couch. I didn't recognize the man at all. Apparently climbed up the side of the building and on my balcony on the second story, which didn't even have a lock on the sliding door. It seems almost impossible that this wasn't a specific break-in at my place, but the man denied everything, said he was just trying to rob a random apartment, even though he had taken nothing and didn't even have a backpack to haul stuff. And I mean, he even sat on my couch and just chilled there like he was eating for something. Plus, it would have been way easier to rob a first-story unit. Part of me wonders if me getting out of work early had anything to do with this. Like, did the guy somehow know my schedule? And was that why he was sitting on the couch thinking I wasn't home yet and waiting for me? There's really no way to know. I think it's the uncertainty of what the man was doing that really makes this event so disturbing. Like, would he try to get in the future? And was he really targeting me, or was I just incredibly unlucky? I'm really hoping I don't have to come back with another story in the coming years.